Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out American arrogance versus British modesty. Which culture is better?
Americans are really arrogant. At least that was the result of a research study done in 2016 that showed that one of the most common negative stereotypes about Americans is that they're arrogant.
Okay, I don't think I'm arrogant, but is that my arrogance being arrogant? You know? Y'all be sure to go to Girl Gone London and like and subscribe. 1. America's international image. As the Obama era comes to a close, the overall image of the United States among key publics in North America, Europe, and the Asia-Pacific region is generally favorable. Oh, well, this was 2016. June 2016. 9 years ago. A lot has changed since then. I don't think we've become less arrogant. Yeah, this is kind of an outdated... I mean, it's obsolete at this point, right? So much has changed.
Negative stereotypes about Americans is that they're arrogant. This is further supported by many articles about the topic. On the other hand, the Brits get a reputation for being humble, modest, and polite. Just take a look at this Enterprise ad from 2012 showcasing the in-your-face, over-the-top nature of the American salesman compared to the more modest and humble nature of the British one.
Okay.
Hello, Britain! Hello. So come give Enterprise a try. Just look for the aluminum sign.
Aluminium.
No, it's not.
Enterprise, we'll pick you up.
That's what I'm talking about!
Yeah.
Huh?
We've talked about American...
I've never seen that. I guess it only aired in Britain. It fits though, right? It fits.
That's what I'm talking about, huh?
We've talked about American exaggeration and British understatement in verbal communication, but in this video, we're talking about American arrogance versus British modesty. Are Americans really arrogant, or are they just misunderstood? Are Brits really modest, or do they just pretend to be that way? We'll start with some examples of the types of behaviors I'm talking about, and then we'll dive into the why to learn what cultural values and preferences dictate these behaviors. Behavior 1. Selling yourself in conversation. Probably the biggest example of what is globally seen as American arrogance is the standard behavior in the USA to sell yourself in conversation. And by that, I mean focusing on, mentioning, and bigging up yourself and your achievements and what is going right for you.
I have a problem doing that. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm a Gen Xer, and I feel like we're a little bit different from the other Americans. I mean, we're not, but we are. There was a time when modesty was a virtue. Selling yourself was kind of gross. I still feel that way.
And bigging up yourself and your achievements and what is going right for you. This actually applies in two different ways: business and social interactions. In business, Americans are very used to pitching themselves with very bold claims.
No, we're not.
You might walk into an interview and talk all about how you revolutionized the sales process at your previous job.
Y'all, I try to do that, but I always end up backtracking, and I end up being self-deprecating, and I'll be like, yeah, I work well with people, although sometimes I'll blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I always find a way to undercut my argument when I'm selling myself.
I was process at your previous job. A Brit might be more likely to say something like, I was fortunate to have been part of a successful project as the team leader, or something similar. Different people have different ways of approaching this, so we can't generalize completely, but this is not just down to exaggeration versus understatement. As this article from entrepreneur.com puts it, in the UK, self-promotion is seen more as bragging than it is.
Yeah. In the UK, self-promotion is seen more as bragging than it is in the US. Something to which I've worked hard to adapt, because being able to promote yourself and your brand across social media and countless other outlets are a necessity in American business culture. That's why having the right team to go blah, blah, blah marketing is crucial. You want to, yeah.
.com puts it, in the UK, self-promotion is seen more as bragging than it is in the US. When Americans like myself move to the UK and get advice on how to perform in job interviews, the advice is along the lines of, don't be too fake. i.e., answer authentically and honestly, but don't go overboard in selling yourself. We'll go into this more in a minute. Keep this example going from a social perspective. Let's say you get a brand new car. In American culture, culture, it would be much more common and acceptable to share this excitement with others. You might say something like, I just got a new car, it's amazing, you should check it out. And then you might show that person all of the fun features that came with your car, even if it's just a standard car and not a Ferrari or something like that. Brits, on the other hand, would probably not mention it unless you noticed it first, and then they may acknowledge it, but they still aren't going to bring that same level of, look at this, look at me, isn't this amazing, to the conversation.
That's interesting. I remember being a kid and sharing something with my neighborhood friend, Chris. He lived down the street. I don't remember what it was. I got a toy or I got something for Christmas that I thought, I just loved it. It was so cool. And I told him about it and he said I was bragging. He's like, why are you bragging about it? I'm like, from my perspective, I was just trying to include him in the celebration. Look at this awesome thing. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, maybe, I don't know. I feel like ever since then, or tried to be aware of when I sound like I'm bragging, but usually I'm just sharing something. Like I just want to share it with people. It's not bragging. It's just join me in the celebration. This is good for all of us, right?
Same level of, look at this, look at me, isn't this amazing, to the conversation.
Look at me.
Hence, the reputation for being humble
I'm on a
and
boat.
modest. Brits are typically much more conservative in what they're going to tell you about themselves or their achievements or new purchases. Again, we'll talk about why this is after we move on to the second type of arrogance that Americans are often accused of showing, and that is an inability to believe that any other way other than the American way is the best way. This is not about patriotism, but rather the idea that it is prevalent in American culture to view other countries as weaker or not as good, as opposed to just different.
Well, almost every other country is weaker in terms of military. So, like, I'm not bragging, I'm just sharing. I'm trying to find words to say without sounding arrogant, but I don't have the words.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being proud of your country or being proud to be from your country, whether that means America or Sweden or wherever it is. And let's get something straight, because I do think it's important to achieve some kind of balance here and tell you that actually, personally, I do believe there are many positive things about America. Objectively, America is an economic powerhouse in the worldwide sense and does have some great ideas, and some really crazy ones. However, take a look at this comment from
Just for the record, y'all, I love America. We got a lot of problems, but we do a lot of stuff right. And we got a lot of great people.
does have some great ideas and some really crazy ones. However, take a look at this comment from an American talking about all of the ways in which America must be better than the rest of the world.
Okay.
They don't claim everything is the best, so we'll have to give them that. They do say that economic security is not the best in the US, but on topics like economic opportunity, the assertion is that if you want to show up with nothing and become wealthy, there's no other place on earth that holds the greatest potential to do so.
I don't know if that's true. It might be true. It's definitely, from what I've heard, it's better than most places, but it might not be the best. Let's see. Best at what? Helping others? Probably. The U.S. provides more foreign aid than any other nation. Oh, Donald Trump just stopped all foreign aid from the U.S. for the next 3 months. So that's not true anymore. The resources it's provided Ukraine dwarf the rest of NATO combined. Quality of life? Questionable. Hands down, it's the best quality of life of any country its size, population, economy. Russia, China, India, and Brazil all pale in comparison. Areas which are better have much smaller populations which are easier to manage, and individual U.S. states could arguably compete with the best countries in the world on a quality of life perspective. Economic opportunity? Absolutely. If you want to show up with nothing and become wealthy, there's no other place on earth that holds the greatest potential to do so. I don't know if that's true, but it is pretty strong at that, from what I know. I don't know. Economic security? Not at all. The U.S. offers no guarantees. It's up to the individual to secure their well-being. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, yeah. Individual rights and freedoms depends how you define them. I'd bet that in most countries ranked higher, you can't open carry. Right, but what about the right to be free from gun violence? That would be nice, right? It's a different perspective. Diversity? Probably. The U.S. is a melting pot. Yeah. Other places are catching up, though. Food? Definitely. Other countries have great food, but it's localized. The U.S. has all of them, plus our own adaptations and adaptations and original creations. True. Believe that. Geography, pretty close. Sunny beaches, frigid beaches, mountains, plains, tundra, forests, deserts, we've got it all. True. Language, not at all. English is a mess. But we can blame the English for that. Oh, damn. Burn. There are many other categories to evaluate on, and for many you can probably name a country that beats the US, but if you add them all up, the US is going to be at the top, if not extremely close to it. Okay, this is not as arrogant as I was expecting it to be from how she mentioned it.
Say that economic security is not the best in the US, but on topics like economic opportunity, the assertion is that if you want to show up with nothing and become wealthy, there's no other place on earth that holds the greatest potential to do so. Which is essentially saying the American dream is alive and well and America is the promised land. But when researching for this video based on worldwide polls and statistics, actually there are other countries that hold equal, if not better opportunities for individuals and businesses.
Okay.
This includes places like Singapore and the Czech Republic, which was actually #1 on the list in 2023 for its low startup cost, quality infrastructure, and relatively low cost of living.
I'm not moving to Singapore or the Czech Republic.
It's low startup cost, quality infrastructure, and relatively low cost of living. Another example is this person's take on food, stating that American food is definitely the best. Other countries have great food, they say, but it's localized. The US has all of them, plus our own adaptations and original creations. Now, I love American food. I do. Every time I visit, I'm thrilled to eat all of the American food I can find, and America does have some good food.
Barbecue.
The barbecue America does is very good. Cajun food in Louisiana, Tex-Mex.
Hang on, let me look at these photos. Hang on.
Barbecue America does is very good.
What do we got up here? We got a meatball sub, pizza New York. What is that? Oh, buffalo wings. What is that? Some weird Pennsylvania dish. Maryland crab. Baby back ribs, chicken and waffles in Georgia, a Cuban sandwich, jambalaya, pulled pork sandwich, deep dish pizza, cheeseburger, steak, chili, nachos, green chilies, bison. We do eat bison, baked potatoes, onion rings, salmon, wines, burritos, crabs, pineapples. It's good food.
Good Cajun food in Louisiana, Tex-Mex, it's not all Twinkies. But to say that America definitely has the greatest food in the world, I don't even know where to start with that. And
Yeah,
I am
I
not
don't
even
know.
a food snob.
I don't know.
And it's not just about the food, we're getting off topic, but this is just an example of the type of American arrogance that can turn other countries off. Because it often goes above and beyond patriotism and into what other countries globally can view as an inability to respect and appreciate other cultures.
Okay, I'm just realizing now that I am arrogant. I am arrogant about it. The food thing got me. Just because I see it as we've got our own stuff and we've got everything else from the world because we have so many immigrants from all over. We've got it all. But I would say probably a lot of other countries have it all, right? We're a global world. What am I saying? The world is global. I don't know what I'm talking about.
But why? As with anything, there is typically a why behind many of the questions we ask on this channel. With our first type of arrogance versus modesty, the kind in which Americans sell themselves or big themselves up a lot more than Brits, is it because Americans are completely self-obsessed? It's possible, but there's also more to it. Firstly, Americans don't view selling in general as a bad thing. We are an even more consumer-driven society than the Brits, and while Brits actually hate being sold to, and advertisers specifically have to take this in mind when advertising to the British market, Americans don't really mind as much. A sales role in the US can be a coveted position and carry more societal appreciation than in the UK. In some ways, we actually want to be sold to. We'll probably like you more if you've made it easy for us to understand and appreciate why we should buy into what you're saying. So we are taught from a very young age to sell ourselves and our viewpoints. Much of American public education has to do with presenting confidently. And not just on things you actually believe, but also in being able to debate viewpoints that you have no belief in as well. Brits can comment below.
Huh. Yeah, she's right. I hate sales. I might be British at heart, y'all. because that feels gross. I just went to NAMM last weekend. It's the National Association of Music Manufacturers, and it was a multi-day conference, and it's all just about selling music equipment, and it felt gross. It felt gross. It made me like the brands that I like less because it was so salesy. You know? Gross.
Oh, if something similar happened in your education, I was not raised in the UK, so I can't say that it didn't, but I will say from an American perspective that it was extremely common for me growing up to participate in what we would call organized debates in classes. For example, I remember in the 2000s in social studies being given the topic of should America invade the Middle East? But you didn't get to choose your side based on what you actually thought. You are given a side and you have to research, present, and be confident in that side to debate the other team. Then the jury of students would decide who wins, mostly based on the confidence you displayed and not always about your actual points, because we were 12 and had no idea about what war in the Middle East even meant. And this wasn't because I was part of some special class or a debate team, which plenty of schools do also have. This was just normal schooling and something that we did quite often. And you might wonder, well, how does this relate to telling someone that you got an amazing new car they should check out, or bigging yourself up at work? Really, it all comes back to the American way, being that whether you're selling an idea or a product or your own achievements, you don't even have to believe in it really. You just need to fake it until you make it. Americans view this as confidence and as a strength and something to admire in someone, rather than seeing it all the time as bragging. And when you don't possess these skills, we often won't trust you. Does this mean that people don't go way overboard? Of course not. There are extremes, but I would say that even the average American is seen as arrogant compared to the average Brit, who don't like to be sold to culturally and thus aren't specifically instructed to do so in their day-to-day social interactions. And secondly, the other type of arrogance that Americans get a really bad rap for, believing that America is truly the best in most things. Let's look at structural reasons first. America is a vast country, and many people do not travel outside of it, but rather within it. Compare this to the UK, where many people may be able to afford even an inexpensive holiday to somewhere like Spain throughout the course of their life, being exposed to other cultures.
Yeah, Paris is like a 2-hour train ride away, right? I would go there a lot. I'd probably go there like once a month, every other month, every 6 months, once a year.
Americans are also not exposed to other cultures much via the media. You can see my video about the USA versus UK news for more on this topic, but the American entertainment industry is also so large that we are mostly only exposed to American films and American TV shows.
Right.
Whereas in the UK, you likely would have been exposed to mostly British entertainment, but equally be aware of imports from other parts of the world to at least get multiple viewpoints. We can also look at historic reasons. It's funny that the Brits are seen as humble and modest in some ways, because what is more arrogant than the existence of the British Empire and believing you should colonize everywhere you can reach? But I would argue that the existence of the empire and historically interactions with other cultures gave British society a lot more understanding of how things worked in other parts of the empire/world and created less of an insular society over time than the US.
I'm wondering if it has something to do with the aristocracy and the class system in Britain. Because people with money, it's not cool to brag about it. Like, it's taboo for a rich person to talk about how rich they are. And I think that sets an example for the lower classes, maybe. That modesty is a virtue. I mean, it's a virtue here too, but I feel like in Britain, let's say somebody wins the lottery. They buy like flashy cars, some big mansion, and I could see them going to, a party with aristocrats whose families have been wealthy for generations, looking down on that nouveau riche, like, come on. When you get to the end zone, look like you've been there before, kind of thing. I've not thought this out. This just came to my mind just now, so this is not probably the case.
a lot more understanding of how things worked in other parts of the empire/world, and created less of an insular society over time than the US. And back to the US, historically, it was formed by the Puritans who left the old world behind. The very basic story is that they were persecuted. And this is definitely what they teach you in American school, but if you dig deeper and do a little bit more research, actually, the Puritans left because they wanted to create an even stricter community. So they fled. America.
Right. So, yeah, in school we were taught that the Puritans left because they were being persecuted. But really, the Puritans left because they were tired of persecuting everybody else. They wanted to get away from all these heathens, these pagans. They were prudes. Like, thanks, Grandma, Grandpa. They're just tits.
Create an even stricter community. So they fled. America was founded on the belief that there was a better way to do things, the best way, they believed, and they wanted space to live and practice this best way without interference. Are we surprised that Americans hundreds of years later, who have grown up with these teachings and this history, think that America is better than all of the other countries? From the opposing side of this viewpoint, you could argue that the British sense of modesty or humbleness that we've talked about is also fake. Maybe it just has to do with communication and stems from that classic understatement communication very popular in the UK. I can also tell you that I know many British people, including many in the comments, who may also believe, similar to Americans about their country, that the UK is the best country in the world and that the way the UK does things is ultimately the most correct. But this video is more about how people from these countries come across. The point is that Americans have a reputation for being arrogant, and I hope this video has given you some food for thought on this type of culture, where it comes from, and how it differs from what I experience here in the UK. That takes us to the end of this video. As always, leave your comments below on your experiences on either side of the pond. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Y'all be sure to go to Girl Gone London and like and subscribe. Also, check out my other reaction channel. It's called JJLA Reacts Music, where I react to music. A little Arrogance promotion there, selling you stuff. Buy a mug, selling you stuff. Become a patron on my Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/JJLAReacts, selling you stuff. Buy me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com, link in the description. Buy me a coffee, selling you stuff. She told us why Americans are arrogant, but there was only just a little bit at the end about why Brits are modest. Why are British people modest? It could just be communication stuff, right? Why are British people modest? The first question that came up is, are the British upper class more modest or discreet? Including the upper middle class in this, as I'm assuming there may be some cultural overlap. I was watching a Luxury Watch podcast with George Bamford, and his co-host remarked upon one of his watches, "Wow, George, this is really heavy. Is it white gold?" and seemed reluctant to admit it. Perhaps I forget. I haven't seen that old thing in ages. I'm not exactly familiar with what defines the upper class, and I know that Bamford family is new gentry, that the patriarch was granted lordship in 2013. Is modesty a common trait among the class? See, I feel like it, yeah. Traditionally, the British upper classes would not be ostentatious with their wealth. It was seen as uncouth and something for new money people, like I was saying. That's not to say their class wouldn't be clear and obvious if you met them, but it's displayed by more subtle markers of class. It's why a lot of the really high-class British clothing makes don't display clear brand names or symbols. The British class system is complicated. I think some of it comes from that, y'all. Especially with old money, a lot of the showing off is with family heirlooms, like a watch that's been in the family for 4 generations, a necklace that's 200 years old. Basically, it's even if you were richer than me, you still wouldn't be able to buy these. Yeah. He bought his own furniture is considered an insult. Bought as opposed to inherited. Funny. I work in an industry which often brings in wealthy customers. If they got a swanky, expensive car, they're more likely to be new money. Beaten up old Volvo, but definitely have money to spend? Probably old money. One of the markers of wealthy older man is an old pair of salmon chinos. It's their uniform. Salmon chinos. Yeah, those went out of style a long time ago, didn't they? I don't know. Are British people really so self-effacing? Don't sell my information. The British are famous for being understated and self-effacing. A new international survey from YouGov shows that although they are more modest than the Americans, other populations are far less pleased with themselves. YouGov has polled 8 countries in Europe, North America, and Asia to discover confidence in 6 personality traits key to self-image. The American caricature of a self-assured extrovert turns out to be apt. They are the most confident in their self-image across the board. Being the most likely to say they are very friendly, disciplined, intelligent, confident, funny, and attractive. Wow. Yeah, Australia's right under us. Then China, then Great Britain. Wow, the Chinese are more. Hong Kong is the lowest. British people average around the middle of the table, slightly ahead of the Germans and quite a ways ahead of the other Asia-Pacific countries. They are the least likely to say they are very attractive and second to last on being very confident. I think it has to do with class, y'all. Yeah, and like Kaylin said, I'm sure there are some very arrogant British people, but most of them keep it to themselves, you know? We're not reading their thoughts. We're reading their outward expressions, right? This was interesting. I still kind of feel that American arrogance, though. I still feel like I don't want to live anywhere else. You know? I like it here. I like America. I love America. Even with current problems, gun violence, all this stuff, I still love it. It's exciting. It's dynamic. But you know, we're all people. We're all people of the world. We're all the same, really. You know? We're all the same. Be sure to go to Girl Gone London and like and subscribe. Be sure to check out my other channel, JJLARX Music. I'd like to say thanks to my patrons. I'd like to say thanks to my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank you all for watching this with me, and I'll see you next time. Later. I almost burped. There it goes.